Every weapon on this list did something no army, no fortress, no empire could stop. Not because it was bigger, not because there were more of them, because each one made the world before it, and impossible to go back to. And the most dangerous weapon ever built has never actually been used. War is probably the oldest habit humanity has ever had. And in every single era, from the Stone Age to the Age of Satellites, there was always one weapon that stood apart from the rest. Not just the weapon that killed the most people in that moment. The weapon that changed how killing would work forever. Every weapon we are about to cover didn't just win battles. It made whatever came before it completely, permanently obsolete. The spear, the gladius, Greek fire, the cannon, the machine gun, the atom bomb, and what is coming next. This is the story of each era's deadliest invention and what it reveals about the civilizations that built it. Before there were armies, before there were empires, before there were borders, there was a stick. But not just any stick. The Atlatl, a simple wooden lever, could launch a spear at over 160 kilometers per hour. That is faster than a major league fastball. It multiplied a human arm's throwing force by 3 to 5 times. And historians believe it contributed to something almost too large to imagine, the extinction of the woolly mammoth. Here is what matters most about this weapon. It was not invented for war. It was a hunting tool, built to feed people. But somebody somewhere decided it worked just as well on a human being. That decision, turning a survival tool into a killing tool, is a pattern that will repeat in every single era that follows. The Aztecs were still using the Atlatl in the 1500s against Spanish soldiers carrying guns. What is the single weapon that has killed more individual human beings than any other in all of recorded history? A gun? No. Artillery? No. A 20-inch short sword. The Roman Gladius looks almost modest by modern standards. And yet for 600 continuous years, it was the engine of the most efficient killing system the ancient world ever produced. Here is how the system worked, and this is where it becomes genuinely brutal. Roman soldiers did not simply carry the gladius. They carried a sequence. First, a volley of heavy throwing spears called the pilum. The pilum was designed specifically to punch through an enemy's shield and then bend on impact so it could not be pulled free. Your enemy is now holding a useless 2-meter anchor. Then the legion moved in, tight, shield to shield, close enough that a short sword is exactly the right length. The gladius did the rest. It was not the blade that made it the deadliest weapon of its era. It was the discipline, the standardization, every soldier doing the same thing at the same moment. Rome's real weapon was not iron, it was uniformity. The Byzantine Empire created a substance so terrifying that historians are still arguing about exactly what it was. Greek fire, a liquid compound that burned on water. It stuck to ships. It stuck to skin. Throwing water on it made it worse. Imagine being a sailor in the 7th century, watching the sea itself catch fire around the hull of your ship. The formula was so closely guarded it was never written down in full. It died with the empire. We still do not know what it was. It may be the greatest lost military technology in human history. Now from a weapon of fire to a weapon that was too fair. The crossbow did something that genuinely terrified the medieval ruling class. It made skill irrelevant. A knight spent 15 years training for close combat. A crossbowman needed a few weeks. And that crossbowman could kill that knight from 200 meters away. In 1139, the Catholic Church attempted to ban the crossbow entirely. Think about that for a moment. The same institution that sanctioned the Crusades drew the line at a bow. Because the crossbow did not just threaten lives, It threatened the entire social structure. A peasant could now kill a king. It was not a weapon, it was a revolution with a trigger. May 29th, 1453. An empire that had stood for over 1,000 years fell in a single morning. Constantinople's walls had resisted every siege, every army, every weapon for centuries. Then Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II rolled up the largest bronze cannons ever cast. And in weeks, walls that had defined the boundary of civilization simply ceased to exist. Every castle ever built before the cannon was now worthless. Centuries of stone, decades of construction, billions in resources. Obsolete overnight. And then the musket finished what the cannon started. If the crossbow embarrassed the knight, the musket erased him. A weapon so cheap to produce, so simple to use, that armies could field thousands of lethal soldiers with weeks of training. The armored warrior, the knight, the samurai, the elite mounted class was finished. Again, not just a new weapon, an entire class of human warrior made irrelevant. July the 1st, 1916. The Battle of the Somme. First day. The British Army suffered 57,000 casualties. Pause. In one day. Not 1 week. Not one battle. One morning. The Maxim Machine Gun, invented in 1884, fired over 500 rounds per minute. It was the first truly automatic weapon ever built. And it turned the First World War's battlefields into something no general in history had ever faced. Here is what makes this weapon uniquely, almost philosophically tragic. The generals kept ordering the same charge, the same march across open ground, tactics designed for musket-era warfare. Straight into 500 rounds per minute. The Maxim gun did not just kill soldiers. It exposed the thinking of an entire military generation as completely, fatally obsolete. Soldiers stopped charging. They started digging. The machine gun buried a generation of young men underground just to survive. 8:15 in the morning, August 6th, 1945. One plane. One bomb. 70,000 people were dead before the sound even reached the edge of the city. Long pause. Hiroshima. Every weapon before this one required armies, logistics, months of planning, weeks of operations. The atomic bomb required one crew, one aircraft, and a single moment of decision. For scale, the firebombing of Tokyo earlier that same year killed over 100,000 people in one night. But that required hundreds of bombers flying for hours. The atom bomb matched that with one plane and 8 seconds of freefall. And then came the paradox that has defined every decade since. We kept building more, bigger. The Soviet Tsar Bomba released energy 3,800 times more powerful than Hiroshima. Today's Russian RS-28 Sarmat missile can reportedly obliterate an area the size of Texas with one warhead. But here is what stops everything cold. The deadliest weapon ever built works best by never being fired. We constructed something so catastrophic that using it would mean losing the war and the world along with it. That is not power. That is a loaded gun pointed at every living thing on this planet. Every weapon in this story required a human being to pull a trigger. A hand on a spear, a finger on a crossbow, a crew in a cockpit. That is no longer guaranteed. Modern combat drones can be piloted from the other side of the planet, strike with surgical precision, and return home without a single pilot ever leaving their chair. But even that is not the edge of it. Autonomous weapon systems that can identify, target, and kill without a human authorizing the decision are no longer hypothetical. They exist. When a weapon can decide to kill on its own, what era does that put us in? Look at what every weapon on this list had in common. Not just that they killed more people. Every single one made the world before it impossible to return to. The Atlatl ended the era of pure hand-to-hand hunting. The crossbow ended the monopoly of the warrior class. The cannon ended the era of the castle of stone as protection. The machine gun ended the era of battlefield honor and the infantry charge. The atom bomb ended the era of winnable wars between major powers. In each case, there was no going back. The pattern is not innovation. The pattern is escalation without wisdom. Each civilization believed its weapon was the final answer. Each civilization was wrong. The most dangerous weapon ever built has never been fired. Which means the deadliest chapter in this story has not been written yet. Every era thought its weapon was the answer. Every era was wrong. So what does that say about ours? Let me know in the comments, which weapon on this list do you think changed human history the most? And if you want the next chapter of this story, you already know what to do.